The desert remembered her long before men dared to forget. Wind rolled across the plains like a low warning, dragging sand through dead grass and rattling the bones of abandoned fences. At the edge of a quiet settlement, where the land dipped toward a dry riverbed, a widow stood alone beneath a sky the color of old steel. Her name now was Mara Hale, and to the world she was nothing more than a worn-down ranchwoman, bent shoulders, plain dress, eyes lowered in public. People said grief had hollowed her out. They said her husband's grave took the fire with him. They were wrong. Inside the small wooden house behind her, her daughter slept lightly, the way children do when danger has brushed their lives once too often. Lily Hale was 16, sharp-eyed, stubborn, and far too brave for a place like this. Mara watched her through the cracked doorway, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing. Every sound outside, the creak of wood, the sigh of the wind, etched itself into Mara's nerves. She felt it before it happened. The horses screamed first. Mara's hand closed around the table edge as boots thundered into the yard. Men laughed, rough, careless laughter that had no fear in it. That laughter twisted something old awake inside her chest. She moved fast, too fast for a woman people believed was broken, pulling a rifle from beneath the floorboard. But she was already late. The door exploded inward. 3 men rushed in, faces wrapped in dust-stained bandanas, eyes bright with cruelty. One grabbed Mara, slamming her into the wall, knocking the breath from her lungs. Another stormed toward Lily's room. "Please," Mara choked, the word tasting like ash. "Take what you want," the man holding her laughed. "We already are." Lily fought like a wildcat. Mara heard the crash, the cry, the sharp sound of skin meeting wood. Then rough hands dragged her daughter into the lamplight, fear blazing in her eyes as she reached for her mother. "Mama!" But the sound cut deeper than any blade. Mara strained, muscles burning, but the man holding her was strong. She locked eyes with Lily, and in that look passed a lifetime of love, warning and something else, something fierce and unspoken. "Be brave," Mara said softly, dangerously calm. They struck her then, hard enough to send her to her knees. When she looked up again, Lily was gone. Hoofbeats tore the night open, carrying her child into the dark. Silence followed, thick and suffocating. Mara stayed on the floor long after the dust settled. Blood trickled from her mouth, warm and familiar. She pressed her palm to the ground, feeling the land beneath her steady and patient. "They've made a mistake," she whispered. By dawn, the settlement buzzed with fear. Neighbors gathered, shaking their heads, offering useless sympathy. The sheriff came late, hat in hand, eyes already defeated. "Robbers," he said, "likely heading south. We'll put together a posse." Mara nodded, thanked him, watched them leave. She waited until the sun climbed high enough to blind anyone watching her place. Then she began to dig. Beneath the floor, deeper than the rifle, lay the past she had buried with her husband. She uncovered oilcloth-wrapped steel, scarred leather, and weapons outlawed in more ways than one. A long-barreled revolver, its grip worn perfectly to her hand, a knife balanced for throwing, spurs dulled by blood and time. She stripped off her widow's dress and bound her hair tight. When she looked into the cracked mirror, the woman staring back did not look broken. She looked awake. Years ago, men had known another name whispered across saloons and camps, a name mothers used to scare their sons into obedience. She had ridden with thunder at her heels and fire in her eyes. She had ended gangs, shattered posses, and walked away from burning towns without looking back. Then she had loved a good man. Then she had chosen peace. Peace had been stolen. Mara saddled her horse, a big iron grey mare that stamped impatiently, as if it too remembered. She studied the tracks in the dirt, the careless sign of men who believed no one would follow. She smiled, slow and cold. Far ahead, the robbers rode hard, joking about ransom and profit, unaware of the storm behind them. They did not know the land they crossed had once bent beneath her boots. They did not know the widow they mocked in passing stories had terrorized the entire Wild West, until even the bravest gunslingers prayed she stayed gone. By nightfall, she found their first camp. Mara watched from the ridge, counting them, 7 men, armed, confident, sloppy. Lily was tied near a wagon, chin high despite her fear. Pride and fury warred inside Mara's chest, but she forced herself to breathe. This was not a rescue. This was a reckoning. She moved like a shadow, cutting loose one horse, sending it screaming through camp. Panic erupted. Shots rang out wildly. In the chaos, her knife flew true, burying itself in a man's throat before he could shout. Another fell to her revolver, the sound sharp and final. She did not rush Lily. Not yet. She wanted them to understand. By the time the survivors realized what hunted them, 2 were dead, and the night itself seemed to move against them. A voice drifted through the darkness, calm and merciless. "You should have left her with me." Terror finally replaced arrogance. They fired into the dark, hitting nothing. One man broke and ran. He made it 10 steps before the ground took him, a bullet shattering his leg. Mara stood over him, eyes empty of mercy. "Who hired you?" she asked. He sobbed, shaking his head. "You don't understand. We were told she was just a widow." Mara leaned close. "So was I." She ended his fear and turned back to the camp. Lily watched her mother emerge from the dark, blood-spattered and terrible, and in that moment understood something the world had tried to bury. The Wild West had not grown tame, it had only been waiting. And Mara Hale was riding again. Before the dust settles and the fire spreads even wider, remember, if this story grips your heart, subscribe to our channel and share it with your friends. Legends only live when they are told. Morning broke over a land that smelled of gunpowder and fear. The surviving robbers fled before dawn, riding hard, leaving their dead behind like offerings to a wrath they did not understand. Mara stood among the wreckage of their camp, the cold light revealing what the night had hidden. Blood, soaked into sand, a shattered wagon wheel, and her daughter sitting silently by the fire, wrists raw where rope had bitten into skin. Lily didn't cry when Mara cut her free. She only stared, wide-eyed, at the woman her mother had become. Mara knelt in front of her, wiping dirt from her face with hands that had ended lives hours before. "You hurt?" she asked softly. Lily shook her head. "They said you wouldn't come," she whispered. They laughed. Mara's jaw tightened. Men who laugh at widows don't live long. She helped Lily onto the horse, wrapping her in a blanket. But even as she turned the mare back toward home, she knew it wasn't over. These men had been too confident, too organized. Someone had paid them. Someone who knew enough to want Lily alive. They rode through the heat of the day, avoiding the main trails. By evening, the familiar outline of their ranch appeared. Smoke rose gently from the chimney, just as it should. Mara froze. Her hand lifted, signaling Lily to stay quiet. The mare snorted uneasily. Mara dismounted and moved forward on foot, every sense sharpened. The door was open. Inside, chairs lay overturned, drawers pulled out. The rifle she'd left behind was gone. On the table sat a single object, a silver spur, engraved with a symbol she had not seen in years, the black sun. Mara's breath slowed to ice. She had worn that mark once. So had men who believed the West should be ruled by fear and blood. She had broken them one by one, or so she thought. Lily stepped inside behind her. "What is it?" she asked. Mara closed her fist around the spur. Trouble that should have stayed buried. They didn't stay the night. Mara packed what they could carry and rode before moonrise, heading north toward land that remembered her name. Lily didn't argue. She had seen enough to know silence could be survival. 2 days later, they reached a town that hadn't changed much since Mara last passed through it under another name. Wooden buildings sagged with age. A faded sign creaked over the saloon door. Conversations died when Mara walked in. A man at the bar turned slowly, eyes narrowing. His hand twitched away from his glass. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. "If it ain't the widow devil herself." Mara met his gaze. "Don't call me that." The saloon buzzed with murmurs. Lily clutched Mara's sleeve. The bartender swallowed. "We heard you were dead." "I was," Mara said. "For a while." She slid the silver spur onto the bar. "Who's flying the Black Sun now?" The room went still. Finally, an old man in the corner spoke. "Name's Calder Knox. Took over after you, Van." Isht. Smarter than the rest. Meaner too. Mara nodded once. Figures. Knox wasn't just an outlaw. He was a planner. A man who didn't pull a trigger unless it served a purpose. If he wanted Lily, it wasn't for ransom. It was leverage. They stayed the night in a room upstairs, barricaded and quiet. Lily lay awake, staring at the ceiling. "You were scary," she said finally. Mara smiled without humor. "I was worse than scary. Why'd you stop?" Mara closed her eyes. "Because I wanted you to grow up without knowing this world." Lily turned toward her. "It found us anyway." Mara reached for her daughter's hand. "Then I'll make sure it regrets it." By dawn, word had spread. Men watched from doorways, some with fear, some with hope. By noon, 3 riders waited outside town. Old guns, scarred faces, familiar eyes. You coming back? One asked. Mara mounted her horse. I never left. I just got tired. They rode south together, dust rising behind them like a warning. Knox's territory lay ahead, canyons, ghost towns, and hidden camps built for war. That night, they struck one of his supply lines. Quiet, precise. By the time the guards realized they were under attack, it was already over. Mara left the black sun spur nailed to a post, dripping red. By morning, whispers spread across the frontier. The Widow Devil was riding again. And this time, she wasn't hunting gangs. She was going to tear down an empire. Far away, Calder Knox read the message and smiled thinly. Good, he said. I was hoping she'd remember who she is. He turned to his men. Bring me the girl, alive. Outside, thunder rolled across the plains, and the west held its breath. Before the final fire is lit and this legend reaches its end, remember, subscribe to our channel and share this story with your friends. Stories like this survive only because people like you pass them on. The West did not sleep the night Mara Hale rode toward Calder Knox. Thunder crawled along the horizon, low and distant, as if the land itself was uneasy. Campfires burned in Knox's territory, too many of them, scattered like watchful eyes across canyons and ridges. He had built his empire carefully, stone by stone, fear by fear. He controlled roads, water, and men who believed loyalty could be bought with gold or terror. But fear had a memory. Mara rode at the front. Her old allies spread behind her like ghosts returned from shallow graves. Lily stayed far back with two trusted riders, hidden and guarded. Mara had argued with herself all night about keeping her daughter away from the fight. In the end, she chose distance over denial. Lily was already part of this war, whether Mara wanted it or not. They reached the outskirts of Knox's stronghold just before dawn. It wasn't a fort, not really. It was a town built by criminals, false storefronts, hidden tunnels, high ground covered by rifles. A place meant to trap anyone foolish enough to attack head-on. Mara dismounted and studied it in silence. This is a butcher's yard, one of the men muttered. We go in, we don't come out. Mara nodded. That's why we don't go in. She split them into pairs, sending them wide, cutting supply lines, lighting fires in the dry brush where the wind would carry panic faster than bullets. She knew Knox's kind. Control mattered more to them than blood. Shake the illusion and the structure cracked. The first explosion came from the east, then screams, then gunfire, wild and uncoordinated. Mara moved through the chaos like fate-given flesh. She took rooftops, alleys, shadows. Men who had terrorized towns froze when they saw her face, recognition dawning too late. Some dropped their weapons. Some begged. She gave no speeches. By mid-morning, the town burned. Knox watched from his office car. LM despite the smoke curling past his windows. He poured himself a drink, listening to the sound of his empire collapsing. So, he said quietly, she came as herself. When Mara kicked in his door, he was waiting. Older now. Thinner, smarter eyes. He didn't reach for his gun. You look tired, he said. Mara stepped inside, revolver steady. You sent men after my daughter. Knox smiled faintly. I sent men after you. The girl was bait. Mara fired, grazing his shoulder, slamming him back into the wall. You don't get to say her name. Blood soaked his sleeve, but Knox laughed, breathless. You always were sentimental. That's why you disappeared. That's why you lost. Mara grabbed him by the collar and dragged him to his feet. I disappeared because I was done killing. Knox coughed. And yet, here you are. Outside, gunfire faded. Silence crept in, heavy and final. You wanted Lily, Mara said. Why? Knox's eyes hardened. Because legends don't die. They retire. And retired legends make dangerous mothers. Mara understood then. He hadn't wanted power. He wanted insurance. Control over the one thing that could pull her back, or break her forever. She shoved him to the floor. You should have killed me when you had the chance, he said. Mara shook her head. You should have left us alone. She ended him with a single shot. By sunset, Knox's flag was torn down. His men scattered or surrendered. The black sun was burned into the dirt, stamped out beneath boots that no longer feared it. Lily rode into the ruins carefully, eyes taking it all in. She saw her mother standing amid smoke and ash, a figure out of nightmare and myth. Is it over? Lily asked. Mara looked around, listening to the land. For us? Yes. They buried the dead who deserved names and left the rest to the wind. By morning they were gone, riding toward a quieter horizon. Weeks later, people told stories. They said the widow devil rose from grief and fire to save her child. They said she destroyed an empire and vanished again. Some swore they saw her riding at dawn, a girl beside her, both of them unafraid. At a small ranch far from roads and rumors, Mara taught Lily how to ride, how to shoot, how to read men's eyes before their hands moved. Not because she wanted her daughter to become her, but because the world had teeth. One evening Lily asked, "Are you done now?" Mara watched the sun bleed into the hills. "I hope so, and if it comes back." Mara smiled, calm and dangerous. "Then it'll remember why it stayed away so long." The West moved on. Towns grew, legends faded, but somewhere beneath the dust the land still remembered her name, and it never forgot the day the widow reminded the Wild West who had truly terrorized it.